Story 1. In the twists of the night, when the city falls asleep and silence reigns supreme, shadows come to life and spirits awaken. For some, the night means rest, but for others, it is the stage for inexplicable phenomena and terrifying encounters. Among those who brave the darkness are the night watchmen, those brave souls who watch over the sleep of others and confront the unknown in the shadow of the night. James was one of these night watchmen, a solitary and taciturn man who had chosen this profession to escape his inner demons. Every night, he walked the silent corridors of a large office building, his mind alert, ready to face whatever the night might bring. As the hours passed slowly, James began to feel a growing unease, as if something invisible were lurking in the darkness. Strange noises echoed through the deserted corridors, indistinct whispers and stealthy footsteps that seemed to follow him wherever he went. Soon these incidents intensified, and James began to encounter supernatural phenomena that defied any rational explanation. Doors closed by themselves, lights flickered for no apparent reason, and objects seemed to move on their own when no one else was around. Despite his increasing terror, James clung to his post, determined to uncover the truth about what was happening in the building. He began to research the history of the structure, uncovering troubling stories of past tragedies and ghosts haunting its walls. As the nights passed, James became increasingly obsessed with the quest for truth, delving deeper into the mysteries of the building and facing unspeakable horrors. Nightmarish visions haunted him, vengeful specters pursued him in his dreams, and he felt an evil presence that seemed to feed on his fear. Despite his desperate efforts to understand what was happening, James realized that he was trapped in an endless nightmare, caught between the world of the living and the world of the dead. Each night became a struggle for survival, a desperate battle against the dark forces that sought to consume him. Eventually, James understood that the key to his survival lay in his own inner strength. He refused to succumb to the terror that threatened to overwhelm him, drawing on his courage and determination to confront the darkness that surrounded him. In a final act of bravery, James confronted the evil at the heart of the supernatural phenomena that tormented him, revealing the dark secrets of the building and putting an end to its curse once and for all. Although the scars of this experience would remain etched in his mind forever, James had found peace in overcoming the horror of the night. Story 2. In the dim lights of the sleeping city, the streets fade into darkness, leaving only the hum of engines and the flicker of streetlights to break the nocturnal silence. It's in this environment of precarious calm that a man named David concludes his workday as a security guard in an isolated industrial company on the outskirts of the city. Mounting his motorcycle, he begins his journey back home, traversing the deserted arteries of the nocturnal metropolis. David was accustomed to this solitary journey through the empty streets, but that night, something seemed different. A diffuse tension hung in the air, as if the shadows themselves whispered unspeakable warnings. Despite this, he straddled his bike, hoping to make it home before the sense of oppression became too overwhelming. As he rode through the deserted streets, David began to feel a growing unease, as if something were watching him from the darkness. Shivers ran down his spine as strange noises were heard, sounds that seemed to float in the night air without an apparent source. Ignoring his instincts, David sped up, eager to leave the sleeping city behind and return to the safety of his home. But the further he went, the more the feeling of unease grew. Shadows seemed to slink through the dark alleys, and fleeting movements in the corners of his eyes made him jump. Suddenly, as he turned a corner onto a deserted street, the headlights of his motorcycle illuminated a dark figure standing in the middle of the road. It was a distorted silhouette, almost inhuman, with glowing eyes that seemed to reflect the moonlight. A chill of horror ran through David's veins as he instinctively slowed down, his heart pounding in his chest. The silhouette stood motionless, as if frozen in time, emanating a palpable aura of menace. David felt a shiver of terror run through him as his eyes met those of the creature, and he instinctively knew that he had entered a living nightmare, a world where the rules of reality no longer applied. Summoning all his courage, David turned back, hoping to flee this nightmarish vision and return to the comfort of his home. But as he sped up, a dizzying sensation overtook him, and he felt the world spinning around him, as if reality itself were slipping away beneath his feet. When he regained consciousness, David found himself in a place that seemed strangely familiar, but was filled with a gloomy and sinister atmosphere. Buildings were dilapidated, streets were strewn with debris, and an oppressive darkness pervaded all around him. Realizing that something terrible had happened, David desperately searched for a way to escape this nightmare. But the more he advanced, the more he realized that the rules of this strange world were very different from those he knew. Indistinct murmurs seemed to float in the air, and shifting shadows followed him wherever he went. As the night stretched on, David found himself confronted with terrifying trials, encounters with nightmare creatures and deadly traps hidden in the darkness. Every step he took brought him closer to the truth about this strange and hostile world, but also to his own survival. Finally, after hours of wandering through dark alleys and deserted streets, David found a portal that seemed to lead to freedom. But as he prepared to cross the threshold, a sinister voice rose behind him, reminding him of the horrors he had endured and the sacrifices he had made to survive. With a final look at the nightmarish world behind him, David stepped through the portal, leaving behind the darkness of the night to find the reassuring glow of the dawning dawn. But even as he returned to the safety of his home, he knew that the memories of that night would remain etched in his mind forever, a constant reminder of the fragility of reality and the dangers lurking in the darkness of the night. Story 3. In the darkness of a moonless night, as the stars seemed to withhold their glow, Rebecca stood before the austere facade of an old abandoned house, her heart pounding in her chest. She was a spirit seeker, an explorer of the realms beyond, and this house was her next mission. With her research team, Rebecca had heard of the troubling tales surrounding this house for decades. Rumors said tormented spirits haunted its dark corridors, seeking vengeance for wrongs inflicted in the past. But to Rebecca, these accounts were merely challenges to overcome, mysteries to unravel. Entering the house, Rebecca felt a sense of unease wash over her, as if the walls themselves exuded a sinister energy. Nonetheless, she pressed on bravely, her footsteps echoing in the oppressive silence of the night. As they began their investigation, strange events unfolded. Doors slammed shut on their own, muffled sounds reverberated through the corridors, and shifting shadows seemed to dance on the walls. Yet Rebecca did not falter, determined to uncover the mysteries of this haunted house. Over the hours, the phenomena intensified. Voices whispered in her ears, fleeting apparitions crossed her field of vision, and a chilling presence seemed to envelop the entire house. Still, Rebecca continued her exploration, armed with her courage and determination. As the night progressed, the manifestations grew increasingly terrifying. Blood-curdling screams echoed through the corridors, objects flew through the air, and nightmarish visions haunted Rebecca's dreams. Yet despite the mounting terror, she refused to succumb to panic, knowing that the truth lay at the heart of the darkness. Finally, after hours of exploration, Rebecca discovered a secret passage hidden behind a wall of the house. Upon opening it, she was confronted with an unspeakable horror, a dark and sinister room where dangling chains and torture instruments were arranged in a macabre display. Understanding that this room was a place of suffering and death, Rebecca felt a wave of terror wash over her. But as she prepared to flee, a sinister voice rose behind her, reminding her of the abominable crimes committed in these places and warning her not to disturb the tormented spirits that resided there. With a final glance at the accursed room, Rebecca closed the secret passage and left the haunted house, knowing that the secrets it held would never be fully revealed. And though she returned home that night, she knew that the memories of that night would remain etched in her mind forever, a constant reminder of the dangers that await those who dare to venture into the realms beyond. Story 4. In a medical research laboratory nestled in the heart of the city, Marcus, a young and passionate scientist, was engrossed in his experiments late into the night. The clock hands already pointed to 3 a.m. as Marcus leaned over his microscope, captivated by the cells he was observing. Suddenly, a shiver ran down his spine, breaking the silence of the room. Marcus straightened up, his gaze sweeping the room in search of the source of this unsettling feeling. Nothing seemed amiss, but a strange sensation of being watched persisted. Continuing his experiments with growing nervousness, Marcus was suddenly assailed by a flash of blinding light. A strange artifact, seemingly floating in the air, appeared before him, emitting a pulsating and hypnotic glow. Intrigued yet also terrified, Marcus reached out to touch the artifact, but quickly recoiled as it seemed to elude his grasp. As he watched, fascinated, the artifact began to spin in the air, casting shifting shadows on the walls of the laboratory. Marcus felt his heart racing as the artifact seemed to challenge him, provoking him to a confrontation. Suddenly, a voice echoed in the room, a barely audible whisper that seemed to emanate from the artifact itself. Marcus shuddered as the words insinuated themselves into his mind, whispering promises of power and forbidden knowledge. Terrified yet also intrigued, Marcus found himself unable to resist the call of the artifact. He reached out again, this time with a determination mixed with fear, and felt a dark energy coursing through him as his fingers brushed the smooth surface of the object. Suddenly, the artifact came to life, its contours twisting and distorting in a chaotic dance. Marcus recoiled, his mind invaded by nightmarish visions and incessant whispers. He tried to break free from the artifact's grip, but it was too late. In a burst of blinding light, the artifact vanished, leaving Marcus alone in the laboratory, haunted by the consequences of his encounter with the inexplicable.